Hello, good evening. My name is Chinwe Obiaun. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m., I go live and review some mentor recommends. I'm before I've done books like Think and Grow Rich, and currently I'm doing a book called Psycho-Cybernetics. And my mentor is Bob Proctor, and I facilitate people in a program called Thinking into Results. And yeah, I do something called Alchemy Wednesdays, and I go on live and just talk about some of the positive books that my mentor recommends that his mentees read. So, like I said, we're reviewing the chapters in Thinking in Psycho-Cybernetics. We've already done. We're all the way up to chapter 13, so we've already done. This is our 13th chapter, so we've definitely made a lot of progress. So without further ado, I'll just jump right into the chapter. Again, this chapter is called How to Turn a Crisis into a Creative Opportunity. And I just think that it was just I think we all have experienced, things that make us anxious or tense or nervous. And the idea is how can we shift our perspective of looking at that situation and use it for opportunity and not necessarily calling it a crisis, using it as an event as an opportunity. So this chapter definitely highlights that in really beautiful ways. So I'll just kind of go over some of the notes that I took from this chapter that I thought was really important that I'm definitely applying. So this chapter first, it starts off by just talking a little bit about individuals thriving during crisis and how when people are purchasing players for a baseball team, they look at individuals who thrive under pressure, and those are the money players. And so the idea is that when in determining who is going to be picked for a baseball team, a lot of the managers look at, can this individual thrive under pressure? And that is what is deemed as a money maker, that player, because they perform under pressure. And so the idea is that how can we turn pressure into an opportunity? How can we turn pressure moments into opportunities? And so this chapter really it starts off by describing what is a crisis. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a crisis. It could just be a big event that makes you maybe nervous or panicked. How can you reframe the way that you look at it to really benefit you as opposed to freak you out and make you run away from the situation? And so it's the concept of when a situation comes up, are you going to fight or are you going to flight? Are you going to run away? And so that's how they describe a crisis situation. They called it in the book a crisis situation that can either make you it can either make you or break you. If you react properly to the situation, a crisis can give you strength, power, wisdom you do not ordinarily possess. If you react improperly, a crisis can rob you of the skill, control, and ability that you ordinarily have to call upon. So it's like these crisis moments that really start to build character and really allow you to exercise, overcoming fears. And so instead of flying or running away, you're able to rise to the challenge and really start to develop your character, develop your power, develop your wisdom, develop your strength. And so this chapter highlights three main kind of ways to react properly to crisis. And so that's really what I'm going to highlight are these three ways to really react during crisis, or to how to react during those moments that you really want to run away from, but some tools that you can infuse to allow you to overcome these moments. So the first tool to really, react properly in a crisis. First tool to really, react properly in a crisis situation is to practice without pressure. And so that's the idea of, they explained it in a number of ways. So they explained it in a way, they gave this example of rats, where they took two groups of rats. One group had not eaten in 12 hours, and then another group had not eaten in 36 hours. And so the rats who had not eaten in 12 hours, they were able to go through a maze in six trials. However, the rats that had not eaten in 36 hours and they didn't actually drink anything either, they went through the maze in 20 trials. So that kind of shows you the difference of that pressure, how that pressure really made those rats kind of it prolonged the time that it took for the rats to go through the trials. And so that pressure really kind of it affected the rats, and it made them go through the trial a lot slower. And so it's so the what it's pressing upon us is that we want to practice like really challenging things without pressure before we actually go and do them. So they gave another example to kind of help us understand it even more. They gave the example of a fire drill. So the idea is that in schools, I don't know if you guys remember when they used to have fire drills, and it's the whole idea of practicing the fire drill before the fire actually happens. And the whole purpose of practicing the fire drill is that when the fire really happens, you have your wits about you and you're not just running all over the place. You have like a system. You already mapped it out in your mind as to what to do. And so this is the idea of practicing before the crisis actually happens. And so another example that they gave is shadow boxing, or the idea of there's this a boxer who had to box someone, and in his mind he was already boxing this guy and winning 10,000 times. He would always envision himself boxing and hitting this guy in a certain way. And that's what he did during the fight, which allowed him to win because he practiced it so much in his mind already prior to the fight. There's another example of a famous comedian who used to go and do a certain routine before he had to perform that routine in front of a big group. And he said that that really helped him during his doing to do the performance publicly. So this whole notion of like doing what you need to do before the actual event. And so, kind of the science behind it is that it's a form of self expression. So, when that crisis happens or before it happens, or event, it doesn't necessarily have to be a crisis, it could just be like a really big event. Before it happens, it's a form of self expression. And so, the idea is that you want to express yourself over and over and over again so that your mind kind of maps it out so that when the actual event happens, your mind is almost like it'll go on autopilot. So those things, that the anxiety and things like that, your mind won't play tricks on you and cause you to like run away because you've already practiced it so many times in your mind. And so that's the whole concept of shadow boxing. Yeah, and so that it carries over in your muscle, nerves, and brain from practice to the actual situation. And so that's why there's such an emphasis on before any kind of crisis situation that you really practice that situation without the actual crisis or without the pressure of the crisis. And so that allows you to really do well when the event actually happens. The next thing that they talked about in this chapter is the need for So it said we need to learn to react to crisis in an aggressive manner than a defensive manner. So attitude to respond to challenges in a situation rather than like running away, to keep our positive goal in mind. And so it's really just also mindset, right? Just keeping that positive mindset about the goal and really making sure that you're cultivating that positive mindset about the goal. The secret lies in the attitude of fearlessly accepting the challenge and confidently um, expi- ex- expanding our strength. And so, expanding on our strengths. So, really just having a mindset of you can do it, you can face this challenge. And so, that's so important to really cultivate whatever goal or crisis or event that you're going to, that's in front of you, to go in with that kind of fighting mindset, with that attitude, this fearlessly accepting the challenge, fearlessly accepting the challenge. This means maintaining an aggressive, goal directed attitude rather than a defensive, evasive, negative one. No matter what happens, I can handle it or I can see it through rather than I hope nothing happens. And so it's definitely having a victor's attitude as opposed to, just a more evasive, resigned attitude. And so that's what this is kind of really encouraging you to do in the face of crisis, is to kind of have that right mental attitude. And by doing this, the emphasis in this chapter was to keep the goal in mind. You intend to go through the crisis experience to achieve the goal. You keep your original positive goal and do not get sidetracked um, into secondary desires and run away from that primary desire that you have, right? To hide or avoid the crisis situation. So the idea is that, you don't want to look at maybe think about a secondary goal. You really want to go with that primary goal that you established in the beginning, and really have an attitude of fight, instead of one of fear and flight, is what this book referenced, which is so true, right? You want to go in fighting. And what I thought was so interesting is that they highlighted the energy or the emotion that individuals feel before they go into a crisis situation or event situation. They said that there's like this energy, this pit in your stomach, like butterflies, and so the one a researcher and an author, he's in this chapter, he said that's actually just reinforcement. So it's not assigned anyway. So sometimes we can assign it to be fear, but the idea is that he was saying just assign it as excitement and allow it to propel you. So excitement, yeah, so allow it to, you get a chance to assign what it is. And so I thought that was really interesting because, I mean, this is a feeling that is definitely a human condition before any event, having those butterflies in your stomach. And so it's like everyone experiences it. So how do you build a relationship with it that allows you to use it to your advantage and not use it against you to make you run away from the situation? And so this book was really highlighting how to use this how to use, this feeling in the pit of your stomach for you to propel you forward. Um, I really liked how it said, this chapter said, and so they even highlighted it as like that, those butterflies in your stomach. It allows you to release additional power to help you accomplish your goal. So it's like it's there for a reason. It's to allow you to release additional power to help you accomplish your goal. If your intention or your attitude towards your goal is to go forward, if it is to make the most of the crisis situation and win out in spite of it, then the excitement of the occasion will reinforce this tendency. It will give you more courage, more strength to go forward. if you lose sight of your original goal and your attitude, um, and your attitude goal becomes one of running away from the crisis or seeking somewhat of a evading it, this running away tendency will also be reinforced. You will experience fear and anxiety. So it's really just telling you the importance of not running away because that can become a habit. And so the idea is that you really want to make that kind of fighting and addressing your goals like head on with that positive mindset. You want to make that a habit because you don't want to make running away or flight or evading your goal a habit. um yeah, and so I really like how they use that. And so there was this actor who, before he went on stage, he would get himself kind of revved up and excited so that he can feel that energy and those butterflies, because for him that was an indication that it was going to be a really good performance. So he was able to reframe that relationship that he had with this kind of butterflies in his stomach to make it like he just redefined it for him and said, in his mind, he impressed upon his subconscious mind that this is what I need to perform well. So, one person could use it as, fear to hold them back, or another person could say, this is an indication that I'm going to do very well in this performance, or what they call crisis, or really, which is any kind of big event. And so it's really just reframing our relationship to the anxiety or the butterflies in our stomach that we have before a big event. They also referenced this soldier who said the good soldier is usually the man who feels excited just before the battle. And so again, the author, he earlier on, I talked about how the author said that it's just the feeling is just excitement. We can label it, fear or anger, or we can just label it as, this is just the excitement that happens before, my goal is achieved. Um, so just reinforcing like a different relationship with those butterflies in your stomach, and really starting to use it to your advantage. And that's really the mindset of using these things to your advantage before you use them, or before you need to, tap into them. And there was another example that they gave where there's like, so when individuals go to place bets on horses, they look for the spirited horse, or the horse that's really kind of like, jumping around and just, almost untamable, because it's excited, it's spirited. And so individuals will look for the spirited horse to place their bet on. So before a race, they look to see which horse is, really rambunctious, really, just anxious, buzzing, because that's an indication that horse is going to do well in the race. And so, yeah, so that's the idea, is that you want to get excited, you want to have butterflies in your stomach. And it's a sign. It's a sign that's saying you're going in the right direction. Um, yeah, so I thought that that was really great, because I think that everyone feels that, and it's nice to know that it is a human experience, and it's just up to us to reframe our relationship around this feeling. And that's what this chapter is really talking about, is reframing our relationship with those jitters that we have before a big event that they deemed crisis, but it's really turning crisis into opportunity. So like I said, there was three. So the first one was that form of practicing without pressure. The second one is crisis brings power. So that's kind of reframing those jitters, making it into a different, having a different relationship with it. The third one is, what's the worst that could possibly happen? And so Again, these are those three things: how to turn a crisis into a creative opportunity, or how to learn to react properly to the crisis situation. And so many people have a tendency of magnifying or turning really small things into big things with their imagination. And so the idea is that we don't want to use our imagination against us. We want to use our imagination for us. And so the idea is that we can use our imagination to see the situation completely different. And so we want to use our imagination for us and not against us. And again, this is kind of like a mindset thing. Um, Yeah, and so and not looking at, the looking at situations that they can be a potential failures. You wanna look at it like like it is definitely something that, will you wanna go towards it like a fight, like a fight. Um, and so it said most of us, however, allow ourselves to be thrown off course by by very minor or even imaginary threats, which we insist on interpreting as life or death or do or die situations. So it's really just saying, like, it's not that bad. It's not, it's the situation is not that dire. It's not something to run away from. It's not a life or death situation. What's the worst that could happen? So it's telling you again to express yourself. Reiterating kind of that notion of expressing yourself, and this is what you're supposed to do in crisis is just express yourself. Go on and or an event. It's just saying go forth, move forward. Regardless of its origin, however, experience of numerous patients has shown that to be cured by calmly, rational analyzing the situation, ask yourself, what is the worst that can possibly happen if I fail? That's really good, right? What's the worst that can happen if I fail? And usually, if you take the time to walk yourself through that, like they said, carefully analyzing it, the worst that could happen is either you would stay the same. It's not, it's either you stay the same or you gain something, rather than responding automatically or irrationally. So that's the idea. It's like either you're going to probably, like, what's the worst that can happen? Either you're going to stay the same. But when you look at what's the best that can happen, it's like you have an opportunity, you can gain opportunity. So it's like, of course, go forward. Either you stay the same or you gain an opportunity. So it's the constant kind of going forward until its manifestation. Yeah, because those are what's the worst that could happen? Either nothing or you gain something. And so you want to have that attitude is I have everything to gain and nothing to lose. Um, yeah, each crisis is a creative opportunity. So I'm so glad that I got a chance to really um, go over this chapter and yeah, go over this chapter and share it with you guys because I think that it's definitely a human experience to kind of use our imagination for the worst and not for the benefits or the possibilities, the positive possibilities that are available to us, and sometimes using our imagination in a negative way. So yeah, and this is kind of like that mindset thing, really allowing your mind to be fertile ground to work for you and really getting those weeds out of your mind and really fertilizing your mind so that you can plant seeds to produce wonderful fruit. So I'm so glad that I got a chance to go over this chapter with you guys. And I will be here next Wednesday around the same time for our Alchemy Wednesdays. And so, with that being said, I'm going to close this chapter. Next week's chapter is chapter 14, and it's called How to Get That Winning Feeling. All right, folks. So till next week, I'll see you. I'm sending you guys a lot of love, a lot of joy, a lot of peace, and enlightenment. All right, folks. I will see you guys later. Bye.